Hey, what's up, guys? It's me, CP, and I want to talk today about a question that I definitely get a lot of. In fact, I've definitely gotten this question since the beginning of the program, or actually since I started making these programs. And it's a very small question, but with a huge, broad answer. All right, so the question is, why do I always recommend almond milk over regular milk, and why is regular milk not included on the program? It's not that I'm actually against regular milk, and I'm going to address this first and foremost, and then we can kind of work around it from here. What I want to talk about is food allergies and food sensitivities. Now, believe it or not, milk is the #1 food that most Americans, and actually most people in general, have food sensitivities to. And so what is it in the milk? Now, predominantly it's that lactose. Lactose is the naturally occurring sugars in milk. It doesn't really make it sweet per se, maybe a little bit of the sweetness, but it's naturally occurring sugars in milk. Now, in the process that the milk actually goes through, what will happen is that as they process the milk, it's broken down into a form where it's very difficult for our digestive systems to be able to handle the milk once it hits our gut. So essentially what will happen is that when everything goes down into our gut, and I'm going to backtrack just a little bit, and I'm going to start with a saying that a healthy body starts with a healthy gut. And it's so true, because when the food passes through our stomach into that small intestine, we've got about 40 inches of pipe. And in that piping, that's where all of our nutrients are absorbed. Now, if you're drinking milk and say that you are sensitive to it and you don't even know it, what's happening is that 40 inches of pipe where all of our nutrients are absorbed, that becomes inflamed. Now, of course, we've got a good 20 feet of piping after that, but really, the next 20 feet of piping, there's not a lot of nutrients being absorbed. That's going to be a lot of water uptake and whatnot. So really, we want to focus on those first 40 inches of piping in the small intestine, and if that's inflamed, because you're sensitive to a food that you're eating, then we can't maximize nutrient uptake. Now, what I've done is, and by taking milk off the list, all I've done is created what we call like a shotgun blast, saying, okay, most people are actually, I wouldn't say most people, but milk is the #1 food sensitivity out there. And it's also the #1 consumed food in America. So if I can actually take regular milk and switch it over to a milk from a plant source, and also a milk that most people are not that sensitive to, then I can take troubleshooting for you, and I can make this whole process a lot easier. So if I can take milk out and sure enough plug a milk that tastes very similar, but it's going to have half the calories, and on top of that I can reduce the inflammation in your gut, then I know that I can maximize your nutrient uptake, and we can actually start driving those nutrients into your body, and we can really start feeding your body for the first time. Because essentially, if you are suffering from inflammation in your gut and you don't even know that you're sensitive to the food, then you're going to be suffering from some kind of malnutrition, because there's malabsorption in your gut. So really, I'm not for and I'm not against milk. I mean, it's fantastic for those who can actually handle it. However, most people really don't know if they're suffering from a milk sensitivity. Here's a really cool way that you can actually find out. You'll want to remove milk from your nutrition regimen, from your diet, for a good 2 to 3 weeks. And then we reintroduce it and we see how your body handles it. Now typically, with most of the people that I've actually tried this with, they'll remove milk from their nutrition regimen or from their diet, and as soon as they reintroduce it, they're gassy and they're burping and they're bloated and all these different things are happening. And sure enough, they were so used to this chronic inflammation in their gut, they didn't even know what was wrong with them. And then as soon as we remove the milk from their nutrition regimen and then we reintroduce it, now they're gassy again, now they're bloated, now they're burping, now they're uncomfortable, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I've been sensitive to milk for 25 years, and however I've been consuming it day in and day out, I was just in this constant state of inflammation and I never even knew it. Think about all the nutrients that they were also consuming that their body never even completely absorbed. They're suffering from malnutrition. So what I'm essentially trying to do is just take that milk out, try an alternative, and see how it works. Now, keep in mind, if you reintroduce milk and it's fine, and sure enough, you're not suffering from those symptoms, hey, fantastic. Reintroduce regular milk, and you can actually have that as a part of your nutrition regimen. So sure, I guarantee that most of us are probably trying to solve some kind of weight issue here. And if we're having a hard time with that, well, let's troubleshoot some of the other things that we're putting in our mouth and that could be causing inflammation and then creating this domino effect of all these health ramifications down the line. Okay, so maybe milk isn't the food that you're actually sensitive to. Maybe you're sensitive to a different food that's causing inflammation in your gut and giving you those feelings of discomfort and the bloating and the gassiness and all that other good stuff. All right, so let me give you the other 5 top food allergies. They're going to be fish. Now, typically, those who are allergic to fish and shellfish, that's a very violent food allergy. So and there's really a difference between an allergy and a sensitivity. We can have a sensitivity to a food that's going to cause inflammation, or we can have a severe allergy to a food that causes anaphylactic shock, where our body attacks it and swells up, and sure enough, you can't breathe. Typically, food is a pretty shellfish and fish is somewhat of a violent allergy. Nuts. That can also be a relatively violent allergy. Now let's talk about some other just food sensitivities. Soy is a good food sensitivity, and that is definitely one that I'm sensitive to myself. On top of that, we've got wheat, and that's another food that yet I am sensitive to. I mean, I'm sensitive to dairy, soy, and wheat. What are the chances of that? And then the last one is eggs. Eggs is definitely one that a lot of people are sensitive to, and they just don't even know it. So just pay really close attention to your intake of those foods. And I mean, really, if you look at the most commonly consumed foods in America, milk is number 1, wheat's number 2. They're both on the top 6 list as far as food allergies and food sensitivities as well. So what we want to do is just essentially troubleshoot these, take a look at the foods that we're putting in our body and thinking and saying, hey, what are these foods doing and what's the effect that they have on my body and in my gut? Look, I ate dairy, I ate wheat, and I ate soy for 23, 24 years until I actually opened my eyes to these different food sensitivities and I said, wait a second, why am I always feeling this discomfort? Why am I always gassy? Why am I always bloated? Sure enough, I removed those from my diet, reintroduced a couple, and I actually reintroduced one at a time, so I removed them from my diet for 2 weeks. Reintroduced milk, sure enough, I was sensitive to it, and my body rejected it. Reintroduced soy, sure enough, my body didn't like that either. Reintroduced wheat, my body didn't like that. I reintroduced eggs, I'm fine with it. I reintroduced nuts and fish, I'm great with it. So I quickly identified these foods that my body should never be eating, because no matter what, there's really nothing I can do about it. That when I'm going to consume those foods, my body's going to attack them, cause the inflammation in the gut, and I'm not going to be able to absorb my nutrients well. And you know what? Now that I've gone through that, I know what I'm sensitive to for life. So I can keep those foods removed out of my diet, and number 1, all the foods that I'm eating, I feel really, really good. I've got high energy levels, I'm maximizing my nutrient uptake, and I've got that knowledge, I've got that power for life. So I encourage you to try the same. And sorry, I know we started off with a very small question. Why do I like almond milk over regular milk? Well, it's just the first step in the process to troubleshooting foods that you may be sensitive to. So I just wanted to go after food number 1, the number 1 food on the list, because I know that so many people are sensitive to milk, to the lactose in the milk. And so I would much rather remove that and say, okay, here's an alternative, and I know for a fact that I'm going to touch so many lives out there, and if they make that substitution, sure enough, I actually might be able to alleviate some of their discomfort. And in the process, when we reduce that inflammation, the swelling goes down, and all the bloating that our body is typically under in these chronic conditions, we can start to reduce that as well. So I just want to get the wheels rolling there just a little bit and get you starting to explore the possibilities of removing some of these foods from your diet, reintroducing them, and just finding out for yourself the foods that you may be sensitive to that actually might be holding you back from reaching your goals. So I hope that answers your question, and sorry for the long-winded answer, but anyway, do some searching out there, some soul searching, and play around with these different foods, see what you think. All right, see you guys.